Hello and welcome to the latest Telecompetitor Broadband Industry Innovator Series interview. I'm Bernie Arnason with Telecompetitor and Pivot, and thrilled to have you here. Our focus today is on broadband funding, the plethora of broadband funding programs that are now available, but we're going to put some special emphasis today on the state funding programs. And I have with me today Mark Mrla of Finley Engineering, and Mark has a ton of experience working with service providers and helping them kind of navigate all of these state programs and what that means for them. So welcome, Mark, and give us a little bit of your background.
Sure, thanks, Bernie. I've been with Finley about 12 years, and during that time, I've been involved in project management, engineering. I'm a licensed PE. I'm also a certified project management professional. So I'm getting involved in just about everything, but one of the things I've been involved in throughout my career at Finley is federal funding, and then in the last 6 to 7 years, I have spent a lot of time on state funding.
So it's great to kind of hear you mix that up a little bit, because as we talk today, we're right in the thick and middle of the RDOF program, and you've got the Reconnect program going on as well. And so there's a lot of kind of attention, if you will, at the federal level for all those federal programs. But individual states all across the country are also quite active with broadband funding. And one of the things I'll start off with you on is, do you feel like rural broadband carriers are taking as much advantage of these state-funded programs as perhaps they are with the federal programs, or maybe even more? What are you seeing out there?
No, I actually do think there's many providers that are getting more involved in state programs all the time. There are, well, like I said, in the 8 states we're involved in, we've actually seen an increase in the number of applications. It varies sometimes year to year depending on what's going on. And actually, one of the things that's changed quite a bit is the large providers years ago weren't spending so much time applying for state grant money. They spent more time challenging the applications. But in the last 2-3 years here, we've started to see a lot more applications from the large providers.
Wow, interesting. And some really great perspective there. You know, I didn't even think about kind of the larger providers and their activity at the state level. You do see some of them at the federal level as well. And kind of that ebb and flow you talked about, because I know there's a lot of preparation and a lot of effort that goes into, preparing for these programs, whether they're at the state or federal level. And I'm curious, just from your perspective, how does that stack up in terms of the prep time and kind of the red tape that you have to go through? Is it pretty equivalent at the federal and state level, or is one, maybe less cumbersome than the other?
It varies quite a bit. When you compare to what the USDA loan program has had for many, many years, you'd end up with a 3-ring binder 2 to 3 inches thick with your application materials. I think a lot of that has changed now, especially when we get into the state programs, and even the federal programs are operating a little differently now. But it's one of the things that's really happened is, especially this year, is we're starting to see a lot more coordination having to happen between the federal and the state.
So, you've got great experience, on both sides, federal and state. And I guess from your perspective, is there any advantage you see with these state programs, over the federal program?
From a provider perspective, I guess I'd first say you're competing with less organizations because You're only competing within the state. Another thing we've seen is a lot of the states are becoming a lot more proactive with some of the mapping issues that are out there, some of the GIS data. And then the other thing we've noticed too is the states are considering a lot of other factors anymore, or at least some of the states are. For example, they start to ask you a lot more than just providing a low bid. You're now getting more and more into how active is your community in participating in this project? What are the impacts in the community?
Yeah, interesting. So sounds like getting stakeholders and community stakeholders involved in the process, and maybe even a part of the application is key on the state level.
And actually, they are a part of the applications because at least in some of the states, they require community support letters.
Yeah.
And that has become such a big thing in some states that we've had clients that have provided between 100 and 150 support letters.
So you mentioned the state of Minnesota, and I know you have a lot of familiarity with what Minnesota is doing, and they've really gotten a lot of accolades and attention for the state program there. What makes the Minnesota program so good? What are they doing right up there?
I think part of it is they have had a program since 2014, and they have provided funds all of the years between then and now, except for one. It's viewed as successful enough that now Minnesota has been asked to consult with over 25 other states to help them put together their bills to propose for legislation, their processes that they develop for their program.
Now, regardless of the program, or regardless of where you are in what state and so forth, what are some steps you would advise providers to plan for to be successful in these programs? How can they start planning, and what should they start pulling together to be successful?
I would say the biggest and most important is long-term planning. When we started the program, it was interesting trying to accomplish the application in such a short period of time. In the meantime, what we've done in recent years is we've started to do a lot more long-term planning with our clients, helping them put together some strategies as far as edging out and locations and technologies and things like that. And also there's a lot of mapping that can be done even prior to knowing about the applications and what the state is offering. That not only helps them for their long-term planning perspective, but then it also helps them even if it's not funded by, say, a state or federal government.
So Mark, what final words of wisdom or advice would you offer service providers who are looking at these programs, both on the state and federal level, about participation and taking advantage of these opportunities?
Well, the biggest one I think I already mentioned, the long-term planning. It's just so valuable in so many ways. It helps prepare you for so many things. So that would be my number one by a long shot. When you get into some of the other things, it gets a little bit more state specific. For example, it's pretty common for states to want to spread the money across their state and not put too much into one area. The one thing I would say overall is we've noticed the applications are getting better every year. And so I would say if you're interested in applying for state money, especially in states that have had a program for more than a couple of years, you're going to have to step your game up. They're getting a little more competitive.
Awesome. That's a great place to end it. But this is an evolving issue. So stay tuned to Telecompetitor for the latest insight on rural broadband funding. And of course, feel free to reach out to Mark there at Finley. They've got some great experience there as well. So thank you, Mark, for sharing that insight today. Thanks to Finley Engineering for sponsoring this series. And we're hoping that we all can get together soon at an industry event in the future. I know I am. I'm sure you are as well. And so take care, everyone. Please remain safe, and look forward to visiting with you again on a future Broadband Industry Insight series. Take care. Bye-bye.